Hi, I'm Heinbach, and it's good to have you back. Welcome to Patreon Q&A number 19, where I answer the questions that are sent to me by the good people that support what I do on Patreon. These folks are the reason you're not hearing me talk about Raid Shadow Legends or VPNs on this channel, so a bunch of thanks belongs to them. Jean Bagheri. Hey Heinbach, I've seen your video about how to patch the Cocoquantus, and it is very helpful. Oh, that was one of my first videos. I can't bear to rewatch that. Oh my god. I was wondering if you would be willing to share some more tips and tricks about how you use the Cocoquantus. I know there's quite a bit of footage of you playing the Cocoquantus on YouTube, so I hope this doesn't seem like a repeat for you. Thanks. I'm still playing the Cocoquantus live. It's one of my most favorite instruments, and it's downstairs in the cellar now, where I've set up my 2 live sets. And for the portable one, the Cocoquantus is the main hub. And I learned one of the new tricks that I've learned is how to gain stage it with the distortion. I'm playing a bass kalimba through it, and if I work just right with the distortion of the piezo input and the distortion on the channel, it can sound absolutely awesome. So that is something that I'm still experimenting with, but is beautiful. And you should try with the Cocoquantus. See how it works for you as a device that adds overdrive, especially to something, that is acoustic in nature. Stefan Laforce. Hi, do you tune your pitch down tape loops or do you just go by ear? Do you EQ them before the mixer? High pass? I tune what I do mostly by ear, sometimes by the piano, almost never with the tuner. And I always like to EQ the tape loops too. For my live shows, I run the big Wandel and Goltermann filter for them, which is... It's not only the best sounding filter ever made, the Hoch-Tiefpass, but it's also visually so exciting that when I use it, I have to make big movements, and those translate into sound visibly and audibly. So the audience has something to watch. What's happening on stage is happening immediately in the ear too, which is something that's rarer with like smaller setups where you're a bit behind the Dungeon Master kind of modular or wall of equipment. Michael Konomos. Thanks, Heinbach. Sorry for the gremlins that have been into your gear lately. Oh, there's been a few. When I record analog gear, I always seem to end up with a floor of noise. I hear super keen recordings of analog gear from others. There's so many links in the chain that can cause noise, from ground loops to the cables, to the audio interface, to the DAW, to the gear itself. What, if anything, do you do to ensure cleaner analog recordings? How does one even approach all the variables within a setup to figure it out? It's an endless struggle in a bit. I just have to denoise this microphone because suddenly it produces a ground hum that was never before, and I don't know if it's the preamp or if it's the mic. On their own they are fine, but somehow there's a new ground loop issue that's very, very annoying. But when I'm recording Schlaufenzeit, I'm really hard at work to reduce the noise floor. And that goes from proper bias settings on the tape machine to clean power whenever possible. So I use a power distributor for that, power conditioner. I think it's the cheapest Furman that I'm using. Then it's all about having cables that are correct, and then have the gain staging absolutely precise and fine. Then you get to a noise floor that's acceptable to modern ears, I find, and many people don't so much care about noise anyway. They don't notice it usually. But in the end, Isotope RX. I tend to drop the noise floor by fingerprinting it and then going about like minus 6 decibels using the spectral denoise tool. Isotope RX is an incredible tool to make noise floor a bit more acceptable. Mark Allen. Dear Heinbach, feel free to skip this one if you've covered it before, but I was wondering if you had any beginner tips for creating structures that change or dynamics over the course of a sound piece. I end up making loops or ambience that sounds nice to my ear, but need to work on turning those into pieces that change in an interesting way. That's another video in itself, how to create a structure. And the short advice that I can give is have one thing that is strong, that is your main thing, and then try to go to a different plateau at some point to get a different viewpoint to the main thing that you are doing. And that helps a lot. And what that can be, it can be a part where you take the thing that you have, the big thing, and transpose it into a different harmony. Like something as simple as going to the dominant chord, the fifth up, can give you a very different sort of feeling for what was happening in the main thing all the time. Or by changing the melody up, or by doing a spectral change, or by dropping everything until it's only skeletal parts left, and create dynamic that way. Muting can be incredibly powerful. You sometimes can be amazed by what you can do with just the mutes on a track. And a simple trick is to never only just mute or fade in one thing. Always do two things. One thing is something people can see it coming from afar. But if you do two things at the same time, it becomes more exciting. The listener has to work more to understand what is happening. So never just one thing, always two things. These are just a few tips. I think I can do a full video on this at a later point, if you're interested. Wandenboard. Hello Heinbach, thanks to your videos, I've recently begun my obsession with repairing and modifying old tape machines with which to make music. I'm sure during your journey with test equipment, you have encountered many interesting yet non-functioning pieces of hardware. What tends to be your process when this occurs? Do you seek out a functioning alternative, attempt repair yourself, or seek out professional help? In terms of repairing gear yourself, are there any resources that have proved to be invaluable? I have found that proper documentation has been quite difficult to come across. Yeah, documentation is hard to find, and if there is, like, you have to pay for it, I know some people I can ask now to get documentation, but if it goes to that point, I usually don't bother myself and give it to a tech. I've got a technician, and he specializes in the test equipment stuff now, and I basically keep him busy now for most of the time. I've decided to repair myself more, and I've started fixing simple things. Like I fixed up a microphone for the kids where the connectors were to the light bulb were all wonky, and I just took all these out and soldered them together. Then I looked at a big microphone preamp and opened that up and saw, okay, oh, there might be a tube that's not working, and so this needs to be exchanged. I think this is something that I can do. And other small things. So when I find the issue, I look at it and I see, okay, this belt has rotted away. I need to get a new belt. That's something that I can do. And I actually enjoy doing. I like to listen to what techs say. I really like to listen. So whenever someone comes around with knowledge, like my friend Wouter, I like to watch over his shoulder what he does when he's picking on something and what he's doing. It's really helpful to get knowledge that way. Heavy Bones. Hello, you seem to have such a good handle on separating your content from your art. How do you navigate this? Is this something that even enters your mind? Would love to know, is it something I struggle with myself? Much love from Western Australia. I feel I document what I do. So for me, this is all a documentation of my art. It's not like I'm a content producer and I have like ongoing series. Whenever I do that, I get super bored. For me, it's just a way to basically show what I'm doing day in, day out. And I've only become better at showing what I do and talking about it, and thus creating more of an audience for it through the documentation. So as soon as it becomes too, too content-ish, I lose interest. And that's happened to me a bunch of times. Like every time there's a series I feel like doing, I don't care, because what I really care about in the end is making art, making music. And as much as I love doing videos, these are a byproduct of the art and the music, and they're not the goal in itself. And I enjoy all these things that come out of that, and all the travel possibilities, for example, and the way it opens up new forms of communication, and it finds a new audience for something that, to be fair, is a pretty niche sort of music. So for me, it's always entwined. That was the goal behind it. And whenever I come across, these issues, And it's a lot to do like with sponsored videos, review videos, and all that. I tend to just back off and say, no, I can't do that. And it's something that I've come to realize over time is how I really want to do this. And the way is when it feels good, it kind of is good. And it also shows in the viewers. Like, whenever I do something that's really something that I want to do, people watch, you watch. And that's the best feedback loop I could be in. Walter Schabmüller. Oh, wie schön, eine Bontempi Mars. Hast du die aus Marken bekommen? Oh, I have to translate, sorry. Oh, how nice, a Bontempi Mars. Did you get that from Marke? A piece of Italian synth history. It feels probably well with all the test equipment. Yes, yes. I've got a Bontempi Mars, which is when the toy instrument music facturer Bontempi wanted to do a DSP version of Max MSP all on their own. And it's incredible. And I have made 2 pieces with it. I'm going to make a few more, and then I'm going to make a video. And it's one of the most exciting videos I've ever done, and also one of the longest projects I've been working on, because this is super complicated to work with. Stefan Nitschow, when you find yourself making a song, where do you like to start? And how do you like to progress to keep your inspiration in tune with what you have so far? I find myself getting stuck on drums and have a hard time bringing other assets. I find myself getting stuck on drums and have a hard time bringing in other assets to make it complete. I start usually with the sound or with something that interests me. I basically build little experimental setups. So I think this might be cool to try with this and this with this, and then let's see how they bounce off each other. And since I then make everything into a very live structure, I build everything like a little sculpture, I feel, because all is live. All the voltages are running into this mixer, and I have it all at my fingertips. I don't even think about bringing drums. I think about more like, let's bring in something pulsy to the spacey or something like that. And it goes rather fast, I feel. I don't get bored unless I do stuff a lot with many layers in the DAW. There it's easier for me to get lost and kind of be like, no this, no this, no this. But since every little sound that I do is something that I have touched in some way, I'm not browsing through sample libraries, I'm just using the things that I have at least turned a knob to make work. There's always a little bit of excitement to feel these things come together and think about this texture, how this texture will react with that one. Because I'm an arranger at heart and I love arranging. And that combined with the sound designer and the songwriter, the musician, it's like, it feels like a lot of people in the room are suddenly talking to each other. So I don't get bored. I never had that problem, really, I think. Yeah, except for when I did lots of work with sample libraries and such, where the job was basically to find sounds that others had made to combine into something, which is fine, but it wasn't just for me. Lopez Cartoons. When was the last time music or audio gave you goosebumps? Yesterday, when I was working with Cosmos, and she played just a simple modulated phrase, it was just one note, into the Soviet wire recorder. And suddenly there was a really, really beautiful, like wailing noise, like a sad cat, that interacted crazily with something she did before, where it's like a very powerful Juno 60 line. And these together, this fragility of the one sound and this powerful side of the other, was like, oh, this is very, very good. And it was happening in the room. So it was, a lovely experience in that. It was very recent. Bartek Train. Have you had a chance to try out the Gamechanger audio light pedal? Pretentious company name aside, I think you might like it. It is capable of astoundingly beautiful sounds, and I find playing with it downright hypnotizing. I swear I'm not being paid to write this, just kind of in love with this thing. I haven't tried it. I look at it at Soundgas, I think. Like, have a bunch of, I had a video on Instagram about it, and I thought it looks beautiful, looks interesting. And I definitely, if I see it somewhere, I will give it a shot. But it's not something that's like on my shopping list right now. Jeremiah Turner, I really liked the music in the end credits of last Patreon Q&A. Would you consider putting the audio up on Patreon? How did you do that? Is that a UBM kick from your 608 or the Pulsar 23? How did you do the filtered arpeggios? Vielen Dank. Yeah, that's something that will be out on an album. What I'm right now doing is actually a combination of using the TR-608, the modded one, into the Rot und Schwarz UBM, but only the kick. So the kick from this triggers the UBM, but also the texture of the kick from the 608 is coming through the Rot und Schwarz UBM. I made a video on that thing, so you can watch here. And that's one of the craziest combinations of test equipment and traditional electronic instruments that I have right now. And then the arpeggio is simply the Juno 60, and that gets its clock from the trigger out of the 608. It's all in the setup over here, and when I do my studio tour video I'm going to show it how the setup basically works, but it's very simple. And this is something for an album that I'm making where Nani, aka Orca, my live visual artist, drew images and I get inspired by these images, and then I make this soundtrack for her images basically. Simo Antere. What is your favorite video game music? Do you like it in general? If so, I challenge you to do some old school video game music in some future video. Well, I kept playing keyboard, or rather I kept playing piano because I gave my piano teacher game soundtracks to transcribe, stuff like Leisure Suit Larry. And that is, so you could say I have a pretty much decent interest in game music. And I play a game with the kids where we listen to the soundtrack from Breath of the Wild, and then we have to guess which place that is in. That's something we do in the morning when everybody is still a bit grumpy because it's early and dark still and everybody has to go to kindergarten or school. That's very important. So Breath of the Wild Zelda has been absolutely one of my favorite game musics of all time, simply because it's a very close connection to my daughters. When we first started, I played it through once. Second time, I exchanged with my daughter, the oldest one, and now she plays it alone, and everybody's still like, let's visit. It's more like visiting the world of Breath of the Wild. So I really love game music. And then there's the music by Chris Hülsbeck. And I actually, I made for a friend, at some point I made a mashup of Turrican and some freestyle parts that I did. Game music, old school remake on something could be fun. If I feel like it, I'll do it. And I also, that could be fun because I actually got a dual synthesizer sitting right there behind me on the Fismo, and I still haven't used that for a composition, only for noises. So many video ideas. You're doing my job for me, except I have to do the videos then. Okay. AJ Wilson, what is your favorite software for listening to local high-res audio files on a PC Mac? I have some Bandcamp WAV downloads by this guy called Heimbach, and I want to hear them in all their glory. It's really bad with like listening on the desktop because this is my studio and that's where I listen to that stuff only for professional purposes. So I don't listen to music in the studio for recreation, and that's why I listen to mainly with the preview. So I click on it, preview. I don't listen to it from iTunes. I don't know why, but I make playlists in VLC. So VLC is the thing where I do playlists and organize them for professional playback. David Lynch, you mentioned Braindance a few times recently, and it's a term I'm familiar with. Can you point me to some artists or label for this type of music? It is perhaps known by a different name. Yeah, Braindance is a term I think that came about from Reflex, and the label that Aphex Twin did in the 90s. And it is what later became IDM, which is a horrible term. Like intelligent dance music, that's not what Braindance is about. Braindance is about being like sitting on your couch and listening to music that makes your brain dance. It's not about being smarter than dance music, which IDM is one of the most reviled terms I know, for me personally, in music, because it automatically assumes that dance music is dumb. So IDM, horrible. Braindance, good. Darmy Byrne. This is the most difficult one for me. When do you know that a piece is finished? When I can't add anything anymore. So I try things up top on that piece, and at some point there's no return anymore. It actually diminishes it when I put something on it, so the piece feels smaller instead of bigger. So that's the best point when to stop. Hi Heinbach, cheers from the desert. You occupy this interesting nexus of artist, performer, and composer. I've often wondered how you notate your compositions for future performance or for performance with other musicians. I tend to keep terrible notes records of my experimentations and will be disappointed when I try to recall or share the magic with others later on. Wondering how you do it. These videos that I do, they are part actually, like, especially for remembering how to actually use something. They help me to document what I do. So I have referenced videos that I shot simply because I forgot how to do, for example, the boxcar averaging technique on the nuclear modular synthesizer. So these help tremendously, and then I record. And when I record, I've got a perfect representation of what I did, and it's easy to recall that by ear for me. So recordings and the videos. That's my documentation. And for the new Schlaufenzeit live setup, I plan also to add some notes if I feel I need them. And also because it feels so out of time to have like a little book with handwritten notes, but it's nice. So that's why I want to try that. Michael Menedetta. Hi Heinbach, did you ever try Berna by Giorgio San Cristoforo? If I had a penny for every time I get asked that question, I would at least have €1. Yes, I have tried it. I tried Berna 1 when it came out decades ago. I also tried Berna 2, and I haven't tried Berna 3. And I think it's a lovely tool for learning how something like this functioned, especially from a historical perspective. And it can help you get an idea of the workflow and what was involved at the time. And the price is an absolute no-brainer. Really cool tool. That's it already. So thank you for all your questions. If you want to get a question in, you just have to subscribe to my Patreon to any tier, and then there's a thread that I sticky, and you can ask your questions there. So thank you all for watching, and to the patrons, thank you all for supporting. This one is for you. Bye.